Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Health and Wealth Podcast with your hosts, Tim and Carter.
What's trending, enrichers? Carter Wilcoxon, founder of CSI Financial Group here, with my co-host and former wealth advisor, Tim James, founder of
ChemicalFreeBody.com and your new health advisor. This is the show where we reveal the connection between physical and financial abundance.
Hey, welcome back, enrichers. Carter Wilcoxon coming to you post Memorial Day weekend. Hopefully everybody had a safe and wonderful celebration over the weekend, and everybody understands why we get to celebrate Memorial Day. So as is normal, I am joined by my spectacular co-host, Mr. Chemical Free Body himself, Tim James. Tim, how are you, my man?
I'm doing good. I'm sending emails.
Working it out.
No,
Brian,
I just sent our guest an email.
Oh, nice. Awesome. You know what? That's a perfect segue to go ahead and bring in our guest. This is kind of a funny story. We're actually recording this for a second time. We're not going to go into details why. However, technology, things happen. But let me go ahead and bring in our guest, Libby Griewe of the Efficient Advisor podcast. Libby, how are you doing?
I'm doing terrific. Hey, you know what? I'm glad to be back. So the second time will be even better.
Awesome. Well,
That's right.
I can tell you that whenever I told Tim, I remember I was actually telling my wife about this. I'm like, I feel horrible. I can't believe this happened. I was telling Tim about it. He goes, she's great. She'll do it again. Be no problem. It was great the first time.
I'm easy. Things happen, right?
Yeah, for sure. No doubt about it. So thank you so much for joining us again. And I don't know. I can't remember where. I think you were in Chicago when we did it previously. Is that right? Or in the Midwest somewhere?
I don't know where I was. I'm here in Cincinnati, which is my hometown. I don't remember where I was when I recorded it. That was
WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yeah, I can barely remember where I was 3 days ago, Carter. So,
well, if it's any consolation, post 50, I forget what I had for breakfast today, so I get it. Anyway, hey, enrichers, we are excited that you are here today, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast show. Libby, we're super excited and thankful that you are able to make it back over here again. And as is normal, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to start off with your backstory. Like, what got you into the financial services business in the first place? What drove you to want to be able to have that heart, for helping people? And then obviously in the next segment, we'll get into what you're doing to in your own practice, or what you're doing to help advisors in their own practice.
Yeah. So I had a pretty typical track into financial planning. I originally went to school for engineering physics, ended up in sports marketing, and voila, ended in financial planning. So kind of your traditional, typical route.
Right. Totally. It's sports marketing. And although it is interesting.
Wait a minute, that's not how I did it.
Well, no. So actually my parents were divorced when I was young. So my mom was super adamant about raising a daughter that was really just knowledgeable about not just like inflow, outflow, and kind of managing household funds. She really wanted to make sure that I had a background in investing. So my mom would drag me downtown with her to see her broker. And I eventually opened a portfolio when I was maybe 10 years old and started investing in Wrigley stock. And I loved it because every year with the annual report, I got a free stick of gum. And I thought that was like the best dividend in the history of dividends as a small girl. And so eventually grew that portfolio, went off to school to take the engineering physics route, and really kind of quickly realized that not everybody around me had portfolios, and they didn't have money that was out there working on their behalf while they were in class. And I just found that I loved talking about it. And I loved sharing budgeting and building portfolios. And I was always kind of fascinated by it and had never really thought of it as a career track until I really saw a huge need for it. And that I was not your typical college girl, right? With a brokerage portfolio, worrying about my stock all day. So I found that I really liked talking about it. And then that's actually what sort of, at that point, it's like, well, forget physics. That's like way too hard. So pivoted into sports marketing, worked for the Cincinnati Reds for a year while I studied and got my licensing, and then started my practice back in 2004.
Wow. So
how old were you when you started that practice?
I was 22. So pretty fresh out of school.
fresh and green and just ready to work harder than anybody else, right?
That's right. I was a baby. Looking back, I was like, that was actually a pretty terrible idea and the most genius idea all at the same time.
So now, did you started your own firm, or you went the traditional route of where you kind of worked underneath somebody and they
Yes.
Free laptop and a paid for Series 7?
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah, I worked for a broker dealer. So I had my own gig, but within a broker dealership. So I had some of that support and launch structure, but had a lot of autonomy and freedom to do things my way. And when I was starting back in 2004, and I was with a pretty conservative broker dealer, everybody around me was, I called them the FBFs. They were all fat, bald, and 50. And it was this huge hustle mentality. And it was, if you wanted to make more, you just had to work more, and your wife would work for you for free. And I was kind of like, oh crap, I don't have one of those. And just kind of balked a little bit at sort of the traditional structure and the traditional like hustle mindset that was really prevalent at the time, and really just started kind of paving my own path and doing things the way that felt most authentic to me. And at the time the industry was making this shift from sales to leading with financial planning. And that really resonated with me, with that engineering brain, right? To be able to figure out what's the end result that we're shooting for. And then how can I help clients by reverse engineering that?
So I'm just curious, back in 2004, obviously way before like the technology boom and everything, the name of the game, right, is client acquisition, right?
Yes.
So I'm just curious, like what types of things were you having to do as you're getting started on acquiring, ideal clients? And maybe did you even know what your ideal client was?
Oh, absolutely not. When I started, they told me my natural market was 10 years on either side of my age. And I was like, okay, great. So I'm 22. So I can work with 12-year-olds all the way to 32-year-olds. No. And what I found is that I was that young female, and little old ladies loved me. So they kind of quickly became my little target market, kind of by accident and happenstance. And I reminded them of their daughters or their granddaughters, or they always wanted me to meet their grandson. And they just kind of really took me in without really questioning where I felt like with some of my other more like traditional pre-retiree clients at the time, it was a lot of, well, how long have you been doing this? And why should I trust you? And how do you know what you know? Where these little old ladies were just so excited that I wanted to genuinely help them. And I think they could see that authenticity. So it kind of started there.
So you mentioned that's pretty awesome that you sort of were attractive to them, right? The older ladies, because you resonated, right? You reminded them of somebody. But I'm wondering, so you mentioned sports marketing. What was the reasoning behind sports marketing? Did something happen to you? You're like, oh, maybe sports marketing is what I want to do.
Well, so I went to Miami of Ohio, and engineering physics is in the School of Sciences, and so is sports marketing communications. So it was like, what's the easiest thing that I can pivot to that I don't have to take a lot of additional coursework to get my degree and keep my minor in physics? And communications was it. And I was like, if I want to go into financial planning, obviously being an orator and speaking and communications is going to be really important. And once I got into the communications area, they had a sports marketing public relations track. And that was just kind of cool and fun. And my whole family is in television in the sports world. So it kind of felt like a natural, like in between until I could go off and start my planning business.
So you born and raised in Ohio, haven't gotten farther away from there, it sounds like. And I mean, sticking close to your roots, I guess is my point.
Yeah, I've been out, but have always come back.
You can't help yourself, right?
That's right.
So was there any like cool sports marketing story like that involved any kind of like, I don't know, major league team, or you mentioned something about television, was there something that you were like, maybe I'm going to be a sportscaster one day? I'm just curious on what the sports marketing, lends itself to as potential.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. I had zero interest. My whole growing up, my dad was just like, whatever you do, don't go into television. Whatever you do, don't go into television. And I was the only one in our family that actually listened to him. So no, I had no aspirations of long-term sports marketing. I've always enjoyed sports. It was a fun environment. Basically, the Cincinnati Reds at the time was an organization run by a bunch of kids. And I made practically no money, but had a really, really good time.
Well, I've got a pretty close connection to the Cincinnati Reds, and maybe I had mentioned this, previously or even pre-show the last time. I can't remember, but I think it's worthwhile, seeing as you were so closely connected to Cincinnati. My wife's uncle, my uncle by marriage now, obviously, but he was only 10 years older than my wife. He's a scout for the Cincinnati Reds currently, as we sit here today.
Oh, very cool. Yeah. Well, the Scouts area at the Great American Ballpark is really nice.
And I have never been to a Cincinnati Reds game or.
Well, Carter, you haven't lived. You really need to get out here and we'll go.
That sounds awesome. And,
He'll go as long as there's a golf course close by.
Oh, yeah. Plenty of those.
Yeah. I can promise you there's going to be golf that's going to be involved for sure. But, growing up as a kid, we used to go and visit my mom's side of the family in LaGrange, Kentucky. And we used to go to an amusement park right there in Cincinnati. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Well, let's see. There's Kings Island.
There you go.
I'm assuming that's the one you're talking about. There's also a couple like weird little ones.
This was 40 years ago. So whenever Kings Island was like the big thing.
Were they all turned by like hand cranks back then? Was that how that all operated? Yeah. Okay.
You got it. Electricity had barely been invented, right? 40 years ago. Well, I think it is interesting. We were just talking about technology earlier. I'd like to get your perspective a little bit when you think back to how you first started and how far things have come technology-wise in just the day-to-day that you see yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I started my practice, we were not that far off from having those old-fashioned quote books for life insurance. We had really just pivoted to computers and laptops. And when I started, I didn't have a physical office right away. And I would, if you remember this, I would MapQuest directions to clients' homes, and then MapQuest directions back that I had to print off ahead of time because there were not smartphones. So I feel like an ancient person when I say that. I'm 41, but I'm always like, back in the day, I'm doing like that. I had to walk uphill both ways and print off MapQuest, and we didn't have GPSs or smartphones and all those things. So the tech has really evolved a lot. And then kind of with my sweet spot being in efficiency, really being able to maximize and utilize an effective tech stack to help create workflows and automations and delegations that just make it so much faster and easier and really potentially keep you from, letting things slip between the cracks. It's night and day to where it was 20 years ago.
So I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, and I'm just curious, and the enrichers are probably wondering that too. Whatever ended up happening to that original portfolio?
Yeah. So actually, when I got married, we used that as our down payment on our first home.
Wow. And you said you started that when you were like 10 years old originally?
Yeah. I was 10. I used to deliver. So this is again, like throwback. I used to deliver books for the Avon lady. And when I'd go around and stick them in mailboxes in our neighborhood, and I was a good little German Lutheran. So I saved all of my money. And when I had $5,000, that's when I opened my first portfolio.
Wow. I'm sitting there thinking to myself, $5,000. When did I have my first $5,000? It wasn't when I was 10. Well, I take that back. It's not
That's
like
awesome.
I mean, I didn't save. We just spent it, right? But I definitely made $5,000 early on, but not at 10 or 11 or 12. I think I didn't make my first $5,000. I was closer to 15 years old, 16.
Yeah, no, I grew up German Lutheran, like we didn't spend it. It saved every penny that I got for birthdays and, Christmas. And, but I always was destined to own a business. So like, I always like, I would write letters to Santa asking for business cards and a fax machine. And so like, I always had this long-term perspective, even as a little kid.
That's unbelievable. So was that really ingrained in you from your parents and your upbringing then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a household where my mom would, and we were upper middle class, but she would still wash out Ziploc bags, or reuse everything. And just, it was constantly ingrained, like turn off the light switch. She was like, she could be in a completely different place in the house and she'd pop in out of nowhere and just be like, turn off the light when you leave the room, So yes, it's been actually like a lot of undoing. I probably need to seek some therapy realistically to unwind some of it.
The whole finish your plate, children,
right?
Yeah, it's crazy. So 22, you start your own practice, and then where does it evolve from there?
Yeah. So the first kind of 4 years were pretty typical, working, the 60, 70, 80 hours, really grinding it out, putting in the work, doing the things to build the business. And then in 2008, so 4 years in, I found out I was pregnant. Yeah, it was great because my husband and I wanted a baby, but it was really scary because for the previous 4 years, I had been working like a crazy person. And I was really, really happy with the amount of money that I was making. And I really didn't want to give that up. But at the same time, I knew that this was not going to be sustainable. I wasn't going to be able to show up as the mom that I wanted to be working like that. So that's really kind of where that quest for efficiency really started, is I knew I wanted to kind of maintain what I was doing, but really, really scale the practice back. Ultimately, the goal would be working 24 hours a week so that I could kind of have a part-time at-home mom gig and be the mom that I wanted to be and still run a really big business. And we ultimately, scaled it up to 7 figures as a solo advisor while working 3 days a week and taking off, 14 weeks a year. And I'm a big believer that it's really possible for any advisor at any level in any geographic location, serving any demographic, to be able to really take control of their practice and kind of step outside of that tornado that can often be running a financial planning business, and really put some frameworks and some infrastructure in place to allow them to live out whatever that looks like. So being able just to operate in a way more efficient manner. So whether that's working your kind of traditional week and making a ton more money, or whether that's being able to scale back and do something else.
I think this is what you just downloaded there is pretty profound. And I don't want people to like miss what just happened. Whether you're an advisor or even a business owner, being efficient is very important, right? Because a lot of us forget that we go to work not to be this super busy person, or to, a lot of us get caught up in the ego side of things, right? Where it's like, oh, I made $1 million now, I need to make 2 million and 4, and I just did all that stuff. But we go to work, we have a job to support our personal life. That's the only reason we do it, because if otherwise, obviously there's the growth factor, you want to be doing something, but the reality is that our jobs are supposed to support our personal life. And what happened to Libby is that she really wanted to be a mother. It was the maternal instinct. If she had a husband, they wanted to have a child, yet she was still super entrepreneurial. Obviously, at 10 years old, you got your brokerage account. That's ridiculously awesome. Yeah. That's so freaking cool. I've never even heard of it. I remember it was like 8th grade or something. They gave us, they pick some stocks and see what you do. And I remember picking Boeing and it went up. I'm like, I'm a genius. It's like everything, it's just timing or whatever. But I think that's really cool. So I think we'll just pause right here. And then when we come back, let's pick up where we left off. And again, this isn't just for the advisors. Obviously, you should be very excited right now about what she's going to share with you and how she took her life, had her child, and was able to, have a 7-figure business, take 14 weeks off a year. These are things that everybody's always working towards. So we'll take a break. When we get back, we'll get into how you can do that too.
Estate planning. What does that even mean? When the inevitable happens for everyone on this planet, your estate plan kicks into action. But first, let's start with what an estate is. An estate is simply everything you own. Now, here's the issue and what needs to be understood when this event occurs. You only have 2 choices on this plan. Number 1, either you plan how your estate gets handed out and distributed to those you leave behind. Or number 2, your state decides who gets everything you own. For the first time ever, you can now take complete and total control of this plan that you've been deprived of for most of your life and generations before you. You can get personalized assistance along the way with a team of specialists whose job it is to make sure you have true peace of mind. It's important to understand that estate planning is a journey, and rest assured that our team will be available to you all along the way and at every step. Welcome to eState Plan, home of the last estate plan you'll ever need. To learn more, make sure to reach out to your local advisor licensed with us or go to our website for more information.
What's up, Enrichers? Tim James here. I'm back with my co-host Carter Wilcoxon, and today we have Libby in the house. Griewe. Say that fast 10 times. Griewe. You can do it. You can. It's amazing. All right. So, Libby, like, your story is really cool, like the whole 10-year-old investing thing, and now you're just like starting to start crushing it in business already, and then you want to have a baby. So you literally had these two things pulling you. I'm an entrepreneur since I was basically in the womb. I'm going to crush it in life, financially, and all this stuff. And at the same time, you're like, I'm a woman. I have a husband. I want to have a child. I want to be a mom. And you found a way to put those two things together. So how did you create a 7-figure practice working 3 days a week and have 14 weeks off? I think our listeners would like to know.
Yeah, well, first of all, it didn't happen overnight. So it was a progression, right? I would love to say that I just ripped the Band-Aid off and 2 years later, I had, a couple healthy kids and $1 million practice, and I was working 3 days a week, but that was not the case. It was a slow progression of just consistently getting better, smarter, faster, figuring out a way to do it better, cheaper, easier. And really, when I think about it, it's really kind of three things. It was building a simple client service model that was really repeatable and a really exceptional client experience that we could deliver consistently. And that really drove us to becoming a referral-only practice. So building out a simple client experience, a simple client service model, not overcomplicating everything like we tend to do. It was also building a simple team with the right people in the right roles, with the right company culture, and pouring into them as a leader and actually taking my role as CEO really, really seriously and investing in my own leadership abilities to be able to grow and maximize my team. And then really it's figuring out a lot of simple time-saving techniques, simple productivity hacks, and spending all of my time and energy on the things that brought me joy, the things that were exciting to me, and then, things that were in my sweet spot, your genius zone, whatever you want to call it. But really focusing on everything being effective and efficient, right? Because you can be super efficient without being effective. So it was being efficient, it was being effective, but most importantly, it had to be enjoyable.
So how come you're not the effective efficientadvisor.com?
Way too many. It's already hard enough to spell efficient. Yeah.
I know. I was just talking about this with somebody else today on my company, chemicalfreebody.com. I mean, it's like my son was like, can't you just shorten that up and be like Nike? And I'm like, well, not really. Nobody knows what CFB is, but that was the only thing I didn't like about my name was it was long, but it kind of says it. Yours says it. It's Efficient Advisor. And the bottom line is if they can't spell efficient, well, that's what Google's for, I guess. So, so you just brought up 4 points here that are kind of interesting. You talked about having a system. I believe in systematizing everything, especially the mundane things. Systematizing things can also be delegation. Right, could be part of the system, which rolled right into the next part, which was a team. And you said the right people, which is very important. I've learned this in business. You can have somebody who's a great person on your team, but they suck at their job, where they might be really good at another role. And one thing that I remembered was a coach told me one time, he's like, let's just say it was your assistant or your processor or whoever, would you hire them again? Ask this question about every single employee that you have. Would you hire them again? If the answer is no, you need to go home and fire them. And you see everybody like cringing. He's like, hey, you're paying me $2,000, $3,000 a month to coach you. What do I know? But he goes, here's the deal. You either fire them immediately or you find a better position where they're better fitted. Because otherwise you're creating bogging down the system and the efficiency. Could be a cancer in your business too. something that I don't know if you picked up on this. I don't know if it was one of your 3 because I have 4 here, but you said investing in self. And one thing I've learned is I can't tell you how important it is to invest in yourself. And I've actually had it, quantified by one of a system scientists that you actually get 6x to 10x return anytime you invest in yourself. So there is no other better investment on this planet to make than in self, period. And then the last thing you said was time saving, effective, efficient things to do, right? Always looking for things to do. So what the cool thing is that you said it was a long, slow process, but now you have all of that wrapped up in Libby's brain and your systems, and you can download it immediately to your clients, just like Carter does with his financial advisors. He's like, oh, you're struggling with your practice, you want to grow. He's like, we know exactly how to do that. And they just download it and it's like plug and play. Same thing with the health. Like I struggle with my health and now I put systems in place and we can plug and play people's health. And you're doing the same thing with advisors, like building their practice. So, all right. So anything that you'd want to comment on that, Carter?
Well, I mean, I just want to say that obviously from the last segment and right into here that, a few things come to mind, keep it simple, stupid, right? The philosophy is, you're obviously a big fan of that. And I just, I thought maybe some of the things I wanted to find out from you, Libby, is that mentality. And then of course, the other thing is that you brought up also, Tim, about firing somebody that can hurt your culture. And you mentioned something about your culture that you also, it's tough to be repeatable if your culture has any fracturing that's happening potentially. And that could be from, someone that you hire and being the right people, because you said right people for a reason. Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I always say it is the right people in the right role with the right culture. So it's exactly what Tim was saying before, that you can have the best people. And I think advisors, we tend to hire someone because it's like, oh, they're really nice and their heart's beating. So that's great. And they should come work for us. And then we kind of build this rollout around them and what they're good at or what we think they should be doing, where maybe we have like a loose job description, but then they're kind of doing all the odd jobs, if you will, around the office. And that's really, really common, especially when people are first hiring. But really kind of taking that philosophy and making a major adjustment and really determining what are the actual roles that your business needs to have in order to delegate, automate, streamline, all those things. You actually need to build out the role and then hire the right person for the role. And one person can serve more than one role, but one role can't be divided up amongst a bunch of people. That's where that fracturing, that's where the overlap, that's where the confusion, the communication channels, that's where things start to break down. So for me, it's very much identifying what are the actual roles needed to support your business. And that's going to look different in everybody's business. And then hiring for the role versus modeling the role around the hire.
Yeah.
Hire slowly, fire quickly.
Yes.
Well, there you go. So Libby, let's talk a little bit about, you've got your own podcast now and you've taken your successful model that you had where you're able to enjoy life, have quality of life, right? And now you're trying to teach other advisors on how they can get that type of repeatable practice as well. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So pretty shortly after I had my first son in 2008, it really took about 3-4 years to get down to that 3-day-a-week schedule. And the broker dealer I was working for at the time, was on a huge mission to hire more female advisors and younger advisors. So they started taking me out and trotting me around the country, and people were getting wind of this young female in, Ohio, not LA, not New York, nowhere sexy or special, who's running a huge practice and is one of the top advisors at the broker dealer and doing it part-time. And I found that when I was out talking about it, I just loved sharing it. And it was so great to be able to just give people the thing. So instead of, I always would go to these conferences and, regional meetings, and they'd have these amazing speakers with these amazing ideas. And I'd get back to my office and be like, okay, but like how? Like, I love the idea, but like, I'm staring at a blank piece of paper. Like, can't they just give me a template or give me a chassis to work from? And when I was out speaking, people would start emailing going, well, hey, you mentioned this really amazing meeting note follow-up process. Can you send that to me? And it was so fun to start seeing the feedback of people going, Oh my gosh, I feel like for the first time in the last 5 years, I feel like I can actually leave the office and not be tethered to my phone all weekend. Or I feel like for the first time, I'm actually controlling my business instead of it controlling me. And so it sort of blossomed from there. And that's kind of where the Efficient Advisor was born. And seeing a need for, like, there's lots of people out there that you can talk about mindset or casting a vision for your business and goal setting. The need that I saw and really, really wanted to fill for people was like that super tactical, soup to nuts. How do I actually like do the thing? And can you just friggin' give it to me and let me modify it?
I love that. And it's so interesting because, we work directly with advisors all over the country, right? And the number one name of the game, I mentioned this, before, I talk about it ad nauseum around here. It all begins and ends with client acquisition, right? Well, if you don't, you can have all of the greatest products and services, and you can be a phenomenal person, but if you got no one to talk with,
right,
you implement all the great things, well, it doesn't really even matter, right? So we were sort of the same way. I went out there and I started looking at all the things that advisors needed that they're not good at, right? Marketing being one of the key things. They're not good at marketing. They're great. They're great at relationship management. They're good at giving the solution to somebody, but they're not really good at nurturing and lead acquisition and client acquisition and all those things. So I was just like, well, if it doesn't exist right now, we're just going to go out and build it, right? So you build this template, or you build, the thing that goes, hey, here, we've already done it. We customize it and personalize it, and you just make it your own. And all the way down to helping advisors build a website, which you would think in this day and age, surely they have a website. But it's amazing with the amount of advisors that we've worked with, especially on the insurance advisor, because primarily we're working with those who are working in the mass affluent demographic, right? Of course, who doesn't want to work with those who have $50 million? But the underserved demographic is the mass affluent demographic. But a lot of the agents and advisors and producers that we've worked with in the past, they don't have the tools that are necessary, and they don't really know where to start. So knowing that and understanding that, I was like, well, let's just build it. They'll pay for it if you build it and you make it, super easy, right? That's the mentality, right? That's what we want to have for them. It's like, holy cow, all I had to do was just pay this little small, and of course it comes with a 10x guarantee if you purchase the package.
All the things, yes.
All the things. Exactly. Well, you've done the same exact thing about how do you, process driven, right? Process oriented. And this phrase gets thrown around a lot, and I want you to touch on it a little bit, if you don't mind. Practice management, right? So can you talk a little bit around the practice management that you can help advisors become more efficient and have more of a quality of life?
Oh yeah. You preach on, Brother Carter. I am here for all the things. I think for advisors, what makes a great advisor, the type of person that's an excellent advisor is usually not also the person that's like, oh, I can create systems, or, oh, I see implementation strategy, or, oh, I'm a detail like we need these other people in our practice. And you're absolutely right. It just makes sense to hire it out if it's not your sweet spot, or bring it in. And I think that's what was so effective when the Efficient Advisor was born. And it was like, this is not my skill set. I did not go to business school. I don't have an MBA. I don't know how to build out systems and processes. So just give me I know I need them, but just give me the dang thing. And like you were saying with client acquisition, right? When you realize that you need systems and processes is 3-4 years into the business, when you actually have so much going on business-wise that you're overwhelmed. There's no point in having a really streamlined onboarding if you don't have any clients to onboard. So it's really that client or that advisor who's making that pivot from, okay, I feel like I'm going to make it. I can pay my mortgage. I'm making money, but I don't feel like I have control. I feel like I'm a little overwhelmed. And this business that I love is now kind of sort of killing me. So what we've done is we've really identified 7 or 8 key processes that every single financial planning practice has. And those are marketing and prospecting, the actual planning process itself. It's onboarding. It's their client experience. It's the ongoing planning or ongoing service model. It's referrals. And if you manage AUM, there's an investment management process. And then my personal favorite is kind of a bonus one, but your employee experience and how to actually make build out that culture and make working with for you a really amazing experience. So what we've identified is kind of these 7 or 8 processes that every practice needs, and started building out the micro processes within them and just collecting templates from people who are willing to share. We live in such a amazing culture right now with so many different platforms that just didn't exist when I started in 2004. I mean, my business, I started right before LinkedIn was even invented. So now, we have a community on Facebook that has 1,600 advisors in it. And people will ask a question like, hey, does anyone have a template for a post-meeting follow-up? And they're instantly like 20 people are like, oh, you can use mine. Here you go. And so it's just been this kind of collecting over time of variations, but really identifying what are those key steps, micro processes within each process that allow you to automate, to delegate, to streamline, or to potentially delete, like what is even not necessary, and taking the time to step out of the swirl of your business and really look at things as a CEO and take that role pretty seriously and analyze those processes on an ongoing basis, memorialize them so you're not actually just constantly working to improve them and you can move on to other things with a strategy or a plan to come back to them to make sure that you're always incrementally getting better.
So I'm curious, Libby, you work obviously with a ton of different advisors. You have, I think we said pre-show, you've had 115 plus podcasts of the Efficient Advisor podcast. So as you speak with and talk with many different advisors and you see, maybe some of their challenges that you're trying to help them overcome, talk a little bit about the competitive nature that they have to also deal with and why efficiency is important to be able to be different as well.
Yeah, well, I think, it's funny. So a good story that kind of illustrates this is I had my good friend, Elena, who's also in the advisor space, was telling me that she was working with this advisor who, came to her and she's like, look, I have been growing like crazy and I need help. And Elena was like, great, what are you doing differently? And she's like, oh my gosh. So I started talking about my process and I have this really amazing, unique process. And of course, Elena's like, well, tell me all about it. Like, I want to hear what you're doing. And she's like, so we meet with clients. We discover what their goals are. We collect all of their data. We do some analysis. We make recommendations, and then we help them manage and implement it. And she's like, yeah, but like, that's pretty much what every single financial advisor in the United States does. You know that, right? Yeah. And she's like, yeah, but the difference is that we actually talk about it and we promote it, and it sounds like what people need. So I think one of the misses for advisors, is we think like our clients know everything that we know and they know what a financial planning process should look like. And it's amazing how people who just kind of step out and have a very clearly defined offer, because I think when we sell intangibles, it's difficult and we want to structure ourselves in a way and structure our offer in a way that makes it not only easy to sell, but super easy to buy. And we want to be able to really set the scope of the project, what they are and are not going to get, what is included in that. And then here's how I do that. Here's my process and here's my why behind why I'm in this industry. And I think that's the key, is that every advisor is like, oh, I have to come up with my super unique angle and I need this really tight niche, which yeah, great. Absolutely. And you don't have to be like, I only work with dentists, or, I have to have this really unique 3-step process that I created my own software for. You can make an offer that's extremely compelling just by having a process in of itself and being able to articulate it to clients.
Yeah, I love that. It's it's interesting because you said something earlier. We call it the 3 E's, and you mentioned 3 E's as well, right?
Yeah. Effective
and
enjoyable.
Yes. So one of the things that we teach our advisors, and we're nowhere close to the Efficient Advisor. And then Richards, as you're listening to this, make sure you go check out, Libby Griewe at theefficientadvisor.com to learn more about it. But one of the things that we give our advisors, and some of the things that I have to articulate when we're trying to raise capital for our business as well, they're like, well, what do you do? And what makes you different and everything? Well, we have to teach our advisors to educate, enlighten, and empower their audience, right? Mm-hmm. Now our foundational approach is around estate planning, and that's what leads to everything else that we eventually do and what they do. But it was interesting when you were talking about those 3 E's yourself. I'm just like, maybe you can, Tim was talking about how efficientadvisor.com, it seems pretty long, like chemicalfree.com. And how do you narrow that down, right? So I was just sitting there thinking to myself, maybe I should start a website called 3es.com. And, it could just be these 3 different E's that everybody
Well,
does.
now it's got to be 6 E's, though. You got 6 of them.
No, it's personal 3 E's. Though.
6 E's. It's sexy.
6 E's.
6 E's.
6 E's.
6 E's.
So, anyway,
All right. Well, I think it's time to go to the break.
I know, right?
Taking a break.
We took a hard left there.
Yeah. It was fun, though. It was a fun left.
It was.
I saw a flashing sign. I had to point it out.
Yeah. Good job.
All right. So great stuff, guys. You're very efficient. It's great. Now we're going to go to break. And when we get back, we're going to flip the script and let Libby ask her anything she wants to me about health. We'll be right back.
You want the absolute best for yourself, and you want it to be easy. That's why we created Green 85. It helps with detoxifying the body gently. We're proud it's chemical-free, unlike almost all other supplements you'll find. Bottom line, Green 85 will get you healthier. We look forward to hearing what Green 85 did for you.
To get this product and our other amazing products, go to chemicalfreebody.com. That's chemicalfreebody.com.
What's up, Enrichers? Tim James here. I am back with my co-host Carter Wilcoxon. Okay, Libby, this is where we flip the script. You can ask me any question on health for your health, your family's health, community's health, infrastructure, whatever you want to do.
Awesome. Well, so with Memorial Day just being a day behind us, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, and I just turned 41 here within the last couple of weeks, is metabolism. And I'm curious about what are some of the myths or misunderstandings when it comes to metabolism. And then with Memorial Day being just in the past here, specifically with alcohol.
Wow, that could be a 4-hour podcast. Let me try to sum it up. Let's just focus on the alcohol component right out of the gate because I know a lot of people.
Let's say happy belated birthday. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. Well, happy birthday, Libby.
Well, thank you.
Let's just keep celebrating it. I wasn't going to belate it, Carter. We're just celebrating it right now. I'm living in the present, baby.
Okay.
But thank you for reminding me. Yeah, happy birthday to you.
Well, thank you.
So when it comes to alcohol, the bottom line is that's been like driven down our throats, like literally. It's like I think the way the whole college experience is summed up is launching people into a constant booze fest for the rest of their life because there's always going to be cocktail parties and networking and what the reason why a lot of this is happening is because a lot of people are not living in the present moment. There's so much this societal conditioning and parental conditioning and stuff, and people just don't know how to be themselves, right? So alcohol or marijuana, these types of things are bridges so for people can just kind of cut loose. And the perfect analogy, I don't know if this got brought up last time, but it was like Revenge of the Nerds, right? So they had their fraternity and then the girls' sorority came over and the guys were sitting on one side and the girls were sitting on the other side. And there was the dance. They're supposed to be hanging out and they're just both sitting there not doing nothing. And all of a sudden some guy walks around, I think it was Booger, remember that guy? And he's like hands out the joint to everybody. And all of a sudden they're having a good time and partying. Well, people should be able to do that without that bridge, right? So, and what's happened is like people just don't know how to be themselves. And it's really a sad deal, right? So what they do is like alcohol is equated with fun because it allows them to be themselves. But the problem is that a lot of people drink too much and then bad things happen. Like people get killed, car accidents, drunk driving. Oh, I can drive. And I've actually saved a couple of people's lives, like literally taking their keys away from them. They're like, oh, I'm fine. I'm like, dude, like you can barely talk. Right. All right. So how does this boil down to metabolism and stuff? Because it's alcohol. If you look at your body as a part of nature and you go out into nature, where are you going to find alcohol growing in nature? It's, once in a while in the fall, you might be able to find some fermented figs. Okay. And if you eat a bunch of them, you might get a buzz. Like, and you see that on the, like Discovery Channel and stuff, like baboons and stuff, they're eating literally fermented figs and stuff like that, fruits, and they're getting drunk. Like they're drunk. You can totally tell they're drunk. But other than that, right? This is a human created deal. Yeah. And it's the misuse and abuse of it. So what happens is when you're putting alcohol into your system, it's messing up your hormonal system in the body. So it's throwing your hormones out of balance, which also regulate weight. One thing it really screws up is your sleep patterns, which is also part of the weight deal, right? So if you're not getting proper sleep to rest and restore the body and reset and let the hormones and all that stuff do the jazz, then you're going to wake up tired. I mean, everybody knows it. It's like you feel terrible when you wake up with a hangover, right? It's because alcohol is really not even, the way I look at it is, I look at things like at the base element. It's just acid. Like somebody's like, oh, bread's bad for you, or alcohol. No, it's acid. The bottom line is that you eat a cup of sugar. If you eat let's say you're juicing like all carrot juice, that's about a cup of sugar in a quart of carrot juice. People don't really understand that. That's a lot of sugar. To me, it's just acid. Coffee's acid. It can be way less acid. That's a whole nother topic, but the type you buy. But so is alcohol. So you're pouring acid into your system. You're throwing off your hormones. You're throwing off your sleep. All these things, it lowers your immune system. You guys have probably heard of fatty liver disease, right?
Yep.
That's actually a lot of people that drink alcohol. How many people know of an alcoholic and then had to have their liver failed, and that's what killed them? Right. So it's because it's the body's filter, and it's got to deal with that. It also, over here at Chemical Free Body, one of the big things is we talk about nutrient uptake and trying to get nutrients into the cells, and drinking alcohol will actually impede that. I don't know the chemical processes, but I remember that. And maybe this will get the guys out there that are listening to maybe lighten up on the booze, is that it throws off your sex hormones. It lowers your testosterone, right? So a lot of guys are, unfortunately taking testosterone injections to try to keep up with, and try to stay young. It's not you're really, really putting your, testosterone making ability in a sling that way, right? By taking those injections. And you're kind of doing the same thing when you drink alcohol. You're lowering your testosterone and your sex drive. So there's not a whole lot of good stuff that actually comes out of it. I know there's a lot of scientific research out there that they've posted that says, having a couple things of, I hate to even say it because I'm going to get the wrath of God from a lot of people. Are going to start, thunderbolts are coming at me. But, having a couple drinks or a couple glasses of wine, heart healthy, there is this thing called checkbook science. And, the more I've delved into the science into things, that science is kind of a lost art. Now it's more of the oldest profession. It's basically a hoard out deal because it's pay to play. And it's not scientific method where you actually go out and test things and find it be repeatable. It's more scientific consensus. They get a bunch of people to say, oh, yeah, this is the way it goes, and you're supposed to go with it. Yeah, the Earth's flat. The Earth's flat. Okay, I guess we got to do it. We're going to throw rocks at you, right? So just because something is science today, for me, I don't really see it. But what I can tell you is being in the daily, in the trenches with over 600 people that I've personally coached, I've never seen one good thing come out of alcohol. But what I have seen is I've had people's lives radically transform into magical events of joy and synchronicity in their life once the alcohol leaves. And, the term wife beater t-shirt came from alcohol, right? So, but on the TV shows or the commercials and stuff, they'll show a bunch of young people that are healthy, fit, having a good time on the beach, but they don't show the teen that drove home and was killed, or that killed their 3 friends, or the actual, what it looks like where the teens are gaining weight, they're losing their drive in life. It's a road to nowhere. It really is. I just don't even know what to say about it. And I'm not like, I used to drink my face off in college, but up until then, I didn't even know I was a freshman. I didn't drink. I really didn't drink at all. I thought it was bad because we had that big push for, DARE, that thing. And, but there's nothing really good at it. But if you are going to drink, I would say, good luck to you. And the best thing that you could do is make sure that you're eating lots of cultured vegetables and cultured foods and taking probiotics, because you're literally killing your gut microbiome, which is part of your immune system. And for those of you that are out there drinking, you're probably getting colds and flus every year and feeling like crap. So if you'd like to stop feeling like crap and boost your immune system up, you can do this, and you don't have to have alcohol to have a good time. I've been able to pull this off because after I saw, like, I started healing myself and all my health issues, I actually started recalibrating my life and looking back, and all the bad, really, really, really bad things that happened to me were all alcohol related. So I decided to pretty much give it up. Not that I have completely. Every once in a while, somebody's like, "This is a Huckleberry beer." I'm like, "You got anything Huckleberry? I'm done. Like, I'm trying it." And so I, I'll drink it. But other than that, it's pretty rare. It's going to be pretty rare. Like my friend, she's getting married in October. We've known each other for years. And I was like, I'll probably have to have a shot of Pendleton whiskey, And she's like, "You don't drink?" And I said, "Nah, not very much, but you're getting married." And it's funny, like, when we celebrate, we poison ourselves. It's just like, oh, what a great thing. It's a special occasion. Let's do something special and immune boosting or whatever. Let's do something like crazy and bad. And I don't know, it brings us together. I don't know what it's all about. But so hopefully, does that answer your question? I mean, it's just not good for hormones. It's not good for weight gain. It's not good for sleep. It's not good for sex drive. It's just really, it's not good for much. It really isn't that good. It is what it is. And I'm hate to say it because, I mean, I know a lot of people, like when I was in the mortgage industry, there was a mortgage gal and she worked with real estate agents. That was how she built her business. She built her business with booze. Mm-hmm. She would literally have open bar twice a month, and she'd have all these real estate agents come down and she'd just get them plastered. And then that was half of her business model. And then her other business model, and free food too. And because that's another big addiction, the food addiction. And then she'd have like costume parties or whatever at her house, and they would just get shit-faced over at her place. But they would bond through this, going through the gauntlet of that. Oh, I can't remember. I think I had a good time last night over there. Wow, that was a blast. It's kind of foggy. I feel like crap today, but let's send her some business. And that's how she got all of her business, because she was able to use booze to break through the bullshit, all the societal conditioning, so people can actually connect and build a relationship. And the reality is that's why people are doing this, because they're in fear and they don't know how. They're lost because they can't build these relationships. And we're tribal. That's what we want. People want to have fun. They're not having fun today because of all the stress. And that's where booze comes in, because it solves two problems. It gives you fun and it gives you connection. And Dale Carnegie made a lot of money with that book, right? How to Win Friends and Influence People. Yep. And he studied back in the 1920s, 30s. There was they spent like $25,000, which would be like $1 bazillion today. And they went to Middletown, America, and they interviewed like everybody in the town and asked them 600 questions. And the top two things that came back, number one was about the health, and number two was like how to connect and build relationship. And so he pointed out, number two, the second most important thing was people want connection. Right. So this is why people are drinking. They're drinking for connection, and they're drinking for fun, to have some good time, because we deserve to have a good time. But when you do that, you're destroying the number one thing that's important to people, that was showed in that book back in the 30s, and it's still today, and it's still your health.
Yeah. So good.
Yeah. Well, Tim, you and we talk about all the time, and I took this from you, and I share it all the time when I'm, talking about either our podcast or, health. Right. And it's, the wealthy man wants 1,000 things. The sick man just wants one. Yeah. Right. And I really have, embraced that whole idea, and what that's helped me to do. Right. Because in the financial services business, I mean, come on, Libby, let's be honest. Right. I mean, going to conferences, it's always about socializing, and when you're socializing, it's all about drinking and having a good time, right? It's really easy. It's just part of the deal, right? But it's not necessarily, to Tim's point, very good for you, and it can lead to some of these other things. But it is just part of our profession, and it's really hard to eliminate yourself from that. And some people take it way too far, and they become addicted and things of that. And anyway, it's one of those things that has helped me to prioritize that terminology, or that saying that Tim gave me. It helped me to start prioritizing myself on, like, well, maybe alcohol is just not that important. And the other thing is, if you always do it, or I'm just going to have a drink, tonight, or I'm just trying to kind of cut the edge, or whatever it is, then if you're always doing it and you're not limiting yourself, you don't really have the ability to enjoy it when you do just maybe a shot of Pendleton, every 6 months or whatever the case may be, right, Tim? It helps you really to appreciate it more if you're not doing it on a constant basis.
Yeah, and check this out, guys. This is a perfect like this guy had this guy on today, and man, his life was kind of a mess too, and he cleaned himself up, and he really got into reducing stress. And we've talked about this before on the show too, where like if you don't reduce your stress, you're screwed. You're in fight or flight. Your body's producing cortisol. You're blowing out your adrenal glands. You're literally destroying your immune system on the daily. You will not heal. Okay. There was a guy named Viktor Frankl, and he has a quote that says, and I want to talk about this because you just mentioned something. It's like you go to these conferences. It's almost like Pavlov's dog, right? It's like you have to have a drink and connect with everybody.
Yep. Stimulus
and response. And in his words, Viktor Frankl's works, he had a quote. This is 1946. Between the stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies our freedom and power to choose our responses. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. So the big part of that is that we get to choose. Like when you feel that need that you're like, yeah, let's go have the drinks and stuff. There's a little bit of space there before you do. You can really think about, is this really going to serve me long term? I got to wake up in the morning. I'm going to have to sit through a whole bunch of, breakout sessions, and I'm going to have the main speaker tomorrow. And it's like, I'm going to be dragging around or do I want to feel freaking awesome and take this stuff in? Because isn't that why I'm here? I'm here so that I can improve my practice. And if your brain's not working that well, we didn't even talk about brain function, what alcohol does to your brain. I'm not going to sleep well. You're not going to be very efficient at all. And you're going to, then you're going to go home and you're going to feel like crap, and you're going to have a terrible plane ride home. And then you're going to call Libby and say, send me all the stuff because I can't remember half of it. Right?
I didn't get out of bed. I didn't show up for the first 2 sessions. Yeah.
Yeah. Or don't even make it. And I've seen people be like, I saw a top producer in a real estate, went to a Christmas party in real estate. He got so drunk, he stole the poinsettias. Wow. He just decided to steal them. And they were like, dude, you got to, bring those back. He's like, oh, I didn't take that. The line is like, dude, we have cameras all over the place now. So we got you on tape stealing it, and we're still laughing. Okay. So, yeah, I get it. Sometimes people get drunk and your friends, they do stupid shit, and you laugh about it for years and stuff like that. And that's part of that. But that kind of stuff will happen when you're sober too. And I'm not bashing on people because, like I said, I used to, when I was a freshman, we drank 19 days in a row, and that was my first introduction to college baseball. This guy comes out, what are you getting? No, what are you getting? I said, I'll just take what he got. And I got like a fifth of Jim Beam rye or something. It was the worst thing you could possibly get. And I drank on that thing for 2 or 3 nights and was drunk. I was just drunk, and I was out of control. And it's like, I felt like crap. But when you're young, you can kind of respond. But as you get older, you mentioned earlier, most of the guys you worked with were old and bald and something else.
Fat.
Yeah, old, fat, and bald.
Yep, fat, bald, and
well, it's welcome to America. Like, if you want to break out of this stuff, you have to stop doing what everybody else is doing. You have to change the environment your body's in, and alcohol is definitely one of them. So, anyway, but if you want to have a drink, it's okay, I guess. It's up to you.
Well, if you're gonna have a drink, what should you drink? What is like the quote, like major air quotes, healthiest alcohol to consume?
Oh man, probably the cleanest, I would imagine. I would guess maybe vodka. Like, if you had a expensive vodka or something like that, or gin, something like that. I don't know, whiskey and vodka, I guess, but probably a little, like I said, just don't put the pop in it. Just come on. If you're gonna destroy yourself, be tough. Do it lightly. You don't need to put Coca-Cola in there too.
Just some ice. That's all you need to add to it, right?
Yeah. Or just take a swig out of the bottle and move on. Because it ain't gonna, it's not gonna last that long. I tell you what, like if I have like one shot right now, I'll be buzzed. Especially if it's on an empty stomach. And it's crazy because I used to like have 15 pints of Grey Goose. I mean, almost. And that was about our tipping point when we were hitting it hard back in the day when we were partying. But it was also business stuff. I'd go get drunk with all these guys, and then, business would flood in from them. So now it's like, now the people I hang out with are all kind of tapping into their higher self, and they're really engaged, and they're really about family and community and sustainability. And I get business from those people, and they get business from me, and we don't have to be, buzz. I'm buzzed all the time. I'm high on life. I literally wake up and I feel amazing. I work hard. I go to bed exhausted, not exhausted. Well, sometimes depends on what I'm doing because I'm working on the farm, but then I sleep deep, and then I wake. It doesn't matter how hard I work. I wake up and I feel great. And then I take a sauna and I feel even greater. I take my greens, just follow the routine. You know, we're habitual. All right, Libby, any other questions before we wrap up?
No, I think that was great.
Okay, cool. We really appreciate you coming on the show, and we also really appreciate the Enrichers for listening. And let me pass the baton over to Carter to wrap us up.
Yeah, thank you very much. Hey, Enrichers, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. To see all of our other phenomenal guests like Libby Griewe of the Efficient Advisor, you can go to our website at www.thehealthandwealthpodcastshow.com and make sure to like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Apple, Spotify, Google, Podbean, wherever that may be.
Carter, you forgot to push record.
Oh,
Kidding.
You guys are mean. That was rough. That's rough.
Hey, Libby, seriously, thank you so much for being flexible. Thank you so much for allowing us to make a mistake the first time. And this was phenomenal having you on the show once again.
Grace upon grace. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. So until next time, Enrichers, we will see you on the Health and Wealth Podcast Show. Thank you, everybody. Hey, Enrichers. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Health and Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Wilcoxon.
And I'm your host, Tim James. And by God, we are committed to helping you guys have fat wallets, flat bellies. So tune in again for another episode and make sure to like, share, and drink a lot of water.
Or beer.
You have just listened to the Health and Wealth Podcast with Carter and Tim.